Welcome back to the Ed Morrissey Show podcast. I am very honored to welcome back Ambassador Francis Rooney. He was ambassador to the Vatican. He's also a congressman from Florida's 19th Congressional District, which used to be 19th Congressional District. Of course, that map has changed recently. He has written a book called The Global Vatican. He's written a couple of books, actually, and he's busy with family businesses and doing all sorts of things these days. And it's been a while since we've talked to you, Ambassador Rooney. Thank you so much for coming back to us.
Well, it has, and thank you for having me back on.
So, Ambassador Rooney, we're going to talk a little bit about foreign policy, and that's a pretty wide topic. And there's a lot of things going on in American foreign policy right now. There's the war with Iran. There's what's going on with China, the so-called Don Road Doctrine here in the Western Hemisphere, dealing with Venezuela. A lot of moving parts. You got the tariffs, which are still being challenged in court. A lot of moving parts to American foreign policy at the moment. Let's start with where you think things are going well on American foreign policy.
Venezuela went well.
Yes.
That's about the only thing that's gone well with foreign policy. The CIA did a good job of infiltrating the Squadra Azul that protected Maduro. They got in there. They could take him out quickly, no problems. They might be able to do the same thing in Cuba. I don't know. But they have, as my mother in the South used to say, bit off more than they can chew when they went after Iran.
It didn't seem that way at first. And here's my thought about Iran. And I think we're going to disagree a little bit on this, and that's fine. I'm totally good with that. Is that this is a country that's been making war on us in one form or another for 47 years. And we responded, but I think we kind of got ourselves stuck in between two different spots that are defensible and landed in a spot that really isn't. That's not going anywhere. One is to take them on directly and to make sure you eliminate the threat entirely. The other is to just keep containing the threat with, whatever covert operations you can use to do that, and continue down that path. Instead, we kind of went halfway, and now we're stuck for the last 2 months. Is that what you see, or was the whole thing just a mistake right from the beginning?
No, I kind of see it that way. I worked in Iran right up just before the embassy fell. It's been a long time, a lot of time over there. And they're very complex people. And the one thing you don't want to do is directly confront them, because they will parry around and look what we're doing now. They go from this side to that side. They never answer directly. They keep changing the game. And they're doing it right now to Trump. And he's confounded by it. But we're in it. We bombed them. They know he can't send troops there. That is a major liability for us. And they're going to continue to yin and yang around him while he twists off. It's like Hamlet, hoist by his own petard.
If you had been advising him on this, and he was determined to do the military action that he did, would you have said either go all the way or don't do it at all? Or would you have said just don't do it?
I would have said the American people are not going to allow you to put troops on the ground after what happened with George Bush. Okay, forget it. If you can't put troops on the ground, you can't win. So I would not do anything. If you want to do anything at all, do something clandestine. Go infiltrate some Revolutionary Guard people like they did in Venezuela, pay them off, find a way in, find out where everything's going on, and then assess what you can do.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing the back end of this now, right? I mean, I think, Trump has been trying to cut a deal with people who don't make deals or at least don't stick to the deals.
It's like dating the quarterback. The more you want a deal, the less they will entertain a deal with you.
That's a pretty good analogy.
Well, if you have high school girls, you'll know it.
That's a pretty good analogy, Ambassador Rooney. That's really well put. Yeah, I mean, I think that this is of a piece, though, of what we've seen with Hezbollah, Hamas. I mean, it's the same organization, basically. These are arms of the same organization. Hezbollah and Hamas are creatures of the IRGC. Hezbollah probably a little bit more than Hamas.
Yeah.
And we've dealt with this for the last 50 years, 47 years, at least 43 years since Beirut in Hezbollah bombing the Marine barracks in Beirut.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that they don't feel bound to any agreements that they make. And so you make these agreements, and we have this right now. There was supposed to be a ceasefire with Hezbollah where they were going to disarm. That was like the third time that there's been a formal agreement that Hezbollah was going to disarm, and they never did. Hamas is not disarming Gaza. And I think Trump felt that he was a deal maker who could make this happen when there was really no possibility that it was going to happen at all. And at the same time, you have Israel, who has simply grown tired of the situation with both of these groups, and are determined to destroy.
Using Trump a little bit.
Well, I think, yeah. I think after October 7th, they had a change of heart there. I think they thought they could manage that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you have a little bit more insight into this than I do. So I want to ask you this. The Israelis had been going into these same ceasefires, right? Under some pressure from the US and under some pressure from Europe. They were doing ceasefires with Hamas and Hezbollah, even though they never complied with the terms. And it seemed like the Israeli governments, not just Netanyahu's, but a succession of Israeli governments, thought that this was a manageable problem until October 7th.
Right.
And that did change things, and it did end up looping us into the fight once Trump took office. Do you think the Israelis have a different approach to this? Do you think the Israelis have a more rational approach to this?
I'm not sure they have a more rational approach. Well, they do, in the sense that it's existential for them.
Right.
They have got to fight. We do not. We can measure how we respond. They have got to go all out all the time anywhere, because Iran wants to take them out. Iran doesn't necessarily want to take us out. They want to cause us trouble, but they want to take Israel out.
Right. And that's the reason why they've been developing a nuclear weapon too, which is part of the reason why
and which cannot go any further than where they are.
Right. At this point, though, if you're going to give advice at this point, other than maybe you should have asked me in February, what would you say to the Trump administration as to how to end this or how to get out of this with Iran? Is there a way out, or are we now just locked into this because we can't really bail out and allow them to keep controlling the Strait of Hormuz?
Trump doesn't want to look weak.
Right.
And the Iranians are so clever. They're now saying, we'll talk about nuclear after we open the straits and move on. And Trump is starting to go that way. What was in the news today? He's starting to go that way of, well, we'll open the straits and then we'll talk about what to do with nukes. That's exactly has been Iran's negotiating tactic from day one.
Right.
And you know how well that worked out with Obama. Couldn't go on the military bases, couldn't do anything, couldn't verify anything. I mean, we're not going to get a better deal out of these guys now than Obama got then. Sadly.
Is it too late to go back to the covert thing where you start arming people in populist elements, the MEK, for instance?
Well, there's probably a lot of heightened scrutiny on what's going on around there now. It's kind of hard to insert somebody in a restaurant and have people come by and talk to them when the IRGC is hanging out everywhere.
That's a good point. But maybe long term, that's the best that's going to be available to us. I mean, I think this is the thing that's always been on my mind, is that the only real way to end the threat there is through regime change, because the issue is the IRGC and the mullahs that were enabling it. And frankly, I'd love your assessment on this. I don't even think the mullahs are a factor any longer. I think it's really just become a military junta.
I think it has. And the IRGC has no motive other than self-preservation. And they know that they're losing the people. Do you know that the Agency for Global Media, which used to be called Radio Free Europe, until Trump cut their money, I think he put it back, but he did cut their money for a while. They had 20% market share broadcasting in Farsi into Iran. There are a lot of Iranians, especially young ones, listening to the American message.
and reacting to it. I mean, what happened in January? You saw a very strong populist revolt in action. The siege and the IRGC managed to put it down very violently.
Yeah.
And Trump said help was on its way. And, I don't necessarily know that our credibility is going to rebound.
Well, Obama had the perfect chance with that Green Revolution. He didn't do anything.
Right. Right. I'm not necessarily sure that American credibility is going to rebound with the people of Iran.
Well,
and
if I was an Iranian, I would say once burned, twice burned. Give me a break.
Right. Right. Let's shift to China. That's obviously one of the highest priority foreign policy arenas for the Trump administration. Just came off of this summit meeting with Xi Jinping. China's obviously impacted by this war because they're not able to get access or as much access to below market priced oil.
Right. The Russians will gouge them.
Right. Well, the Russians have their own issues, right? So
the backup supplier.
Where do you think the administration's going right with China, and where do you think it's going wrong with China?
Well, I think it was a mistake for Trump to put Xi Jinping on equal par with the United States. No one's ever done that before, and he did it. And I don't know what the ramifications of that'll be, but it certainly was a stature builder for China in a culture where stature is everything.
Are you talking about the summit itself, going to Beijing? Because he did that, I think, in the first term too, right?
Yeah, I think that I don't think it was a great move of Trump, quite frankly. So now China is probably empowered to think they're an equal to the United States. They're talking like they're an equal. They're talking about a bilateral partnership of the two, because Trump said the two. Wasn't a good move.
Where do you think it needs to go from here then?
It would be better to bring some other people in, like the ANZUS group or maybe some Europeans, and start broadening the discussion and dilute but that's not the way Trump works. So it's not in his nature to do that, to share authority or the limelight. But if he were to do it, it would get some other people in the tent that would show China that there's more people than just us out there in the world ready to deal with them.
I think Trump likes to think that he's the guy who's going to cut the ultimate deal too. And I mean, I think this is part of what drives him. It's part of what's driving Iran as well. It's also part of what's driving the tariff strategy too. And we've seen him. I know that you did want to talk about the tariff strategy that goes beyond China. It certainly involves China, involves China and India, involves all of our trading partners. The tariff policy was sold as a way to rehome manufacturing within the United States, to create leverage with trading partners, and to rectify unfair trading relationships, heavily emphasizing trade imbalances. And as a lot of economists have pointed out, trade imbalances don't necessarily mean unfair trade practices. It just means
we're buying more of their stuff.
Right.
And what about this onshoring? Who's going to do the work? We have less than 4% unemployment in this country, which is virtually anybody that wants a job can get one.
Right.
And who's going to do the work? And who's trained to do the work? I mean, you can't just wake up and have a guy be a semiconductor plant worker.
No, and this is part of the thing that, and I always take people back to this. Rick Santorum was talking about this, what was it, 15 years ago, 16 years ago, when he was a senator and he's running for president, briefly. That we really needed to reorient education back to the trades, outside of the professions, obviously, lawyers and doctors. We really want them to have,
very specific in its
lawyers? Well, we need more doctors, possibly, maybe not more lawyers.
Sure. But we really need nurses.
Well, and engineers. We'll throw the engineers in there, and engineers.
But I'm in the construction business, and I value people that can work with their hands. We have some finishers in our company that can make well over $130,000 a year with all the overtime.
Right.
Pretty good living.
you can make a good living in the trades. You can make a good middle class living in the trades. It's always been true. And I think that people have lost sight of that. But this is to your point, right? First off, we're spending far too much money on education from what we're getting out of it. And it's the wrong kind of education. If you want to build a manufacturing society, you have to build a manufacturing workforce. And we don't have that. And so your point is well taken. We can rehome these things, but we better bring in people who know the trades if you're going to actually do more manufacturing. You have to start reopening steel plants. And I will put it this way too. Where are you going to get the raw materials for all this for? Because a lot of jurisdictions now in the United States make it very difficult to pull things out of the ground any longer. We used to be able to pull things out of the ground.
Permitting reform's a big deal.
Yeah.
Too many special interest groups are clogging up the building of pipelines and the extraction of minerals and things like that. You know, one of my favorite hearings when I was in Congress was on the Education Committee when we had the president of the University of Maryland and the president of Cabela University. And the Maryland guy's talking about all these high-powered degrees they're granting. And the Cabela guy says, how many psychoanalysts and psychologists do we really need in America? We really need more plumbers.
I have theories about this. I don't want to get too deeply into them, but I think that there has been a real emphasis on trying to shove kids into higher education for two reasons. One is simply because it sounds better. I mean, it sounds like it's a wise thing, go to college. And for some kids it is. But for a lot of kids, it is saddling them with lifetime of debt. Mm-hmm. With education that doesn't have the value that allows them to pay that back off. The other thing is,
go be a plumber with debt instead of having become a plumber without it.
Yeah, well, it's true. Then they can go back to the trades and realize what their mistake was. But the other is indoctrination. And since you're talking about this, since you opened this up, and we'll get back to tariffs in a second because I don't want to lose the foreign policy part of this. But this is of a piece is that we're sending a lot of kids into these academic institutions that aren't really delivering a ROI-based education. They're delivering a sort of a formation for a particular ideological point of view, which is sort of antithetical, by the way, to working in the trades. And I think that that's deliberate. And I think it is a deliberate way to sort of get to a postmodern electorate or workforce that simply can't do these things any longer. And
Jules Verne's time machine.
Well, that's a good analogy too. Yes,
the Eloy wandering around down there and can't do anything.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what we've created. And so if tariffs take us there, then I guess I understand what we're doing with them. But the problem is that I think you have to build the workforce first, and you have to build the formation first, and you have to build the orientation first towards a manufacturing-based economy before you can get to whether or not tariffs are actually going to help you out. I mean, once you have those resources, yeah, maybe. What do you see as the impacts right now of the tariffs because we've been doing this for about what? It's been 14 months now since what did he call it? I forget what he called it. Liberation Day?
They're just a tax. The tariffs are just a big tax on producers and supply chains. I've read some things that 1/3 of the tariffs are paid for by consumers, which we're seeing is not working out so great. 1/3 is paid by supply chains, which is also raising the price of goods, and 1/3 paid by the original manufacturer. So sooner or later, everybody adjusts their prices to deal with the tariffs. So who wins? Nobody.
And I haven't seen a lot of things being rehomed in the meantime. Mm-hmm. And again, probably because we don't have the structure for it yet. To be honest with you, I haven't been paying that close of attention to it either. I've been hearing a lot about investments back in American infrastructure, and that's all good, but I haven't seen a lot of that. Maybe you're closer to that, and you can talk about whether or not some of these things that Trump has been talking about are actually in effect.
The Foxconn thing never happened. They came and went. And so basically, I think the tariffs are a huge transfer of money from supply chains, producers, and consumers to the government.
Well, Donald Trump did say he wanted to get rid of the income tax and thought he could pay for it with the tariffs, but
Right. He didn't do that.
That's fanciful. I would have loved to have seen a repeal of the 16th Amendment up front if that was what the actual, we've had this whole thing about fair tax and flat tax and that sort of thing. Fair tax envisioned the repeal of the 16th Amendment as the first step. We haven't even talked about that in terms of reverting back to excise taxes as
how about if they just stopped spending money? Bush spent twice as much as Clinton. Clinton's the last president to balance the budget. Obama spent twice as much as Bush. Trump spent as much as Obama in one term. Biden spent more than Trump. This is nuts. We have mortgaged our children and grandchildren's future.
Well, this is interesting because Donald Trump made it very clear he wasn't concerned about debt, right? He said it's
evidently not.
Well, I mean, clearly not. And he made it, I think it was more explicit in the first term than it was in the second, in the run up to the second term. I don't think we even discussed deficits in 2024 because we were discussing crazy stuff in 2024, disqualifications and dementia.
Yeah.
But 2024 is the disqualifications and dementia cycle, I guess. But it did come up in the 2016 cycle and a little bit in 2020. And Donald Trump kept saying, I'm not concerned about debt. Debt doesn't concern me. Because he thinks that government can basically float it forever. And
you can, as long as you're the reserve currency.
Right.
What happens if we're not?
Issue.
China's trying every day to get the renminbi in more trade transactions. They're doing a deal with Russia now to trade Russian oil in renminbis, not dollars.
I think they were trying to do that with the Saudis too, but I think the Saudis ended up balking at that. Do I recall that correctly?
Yeah, I think so. But you just never know how things will work out. I mean, England never thought the pound sterling would be anything but the pound sterling until World War I. Then they found out it wasn't.
So I know I don't have a ton of time here, so let's wrap up on this. If you were to come in, sit down with Donald Trump and Marco Rubio, what would your advice be in terms of redirecting American foreign policy at this point? Just, a few bullet points. What do you think the priorities are and where do you think things should be redirected?
I would declare victory on whatever terms, even though it may be not accurate, and get out of Iran, stop this mess before they continue to abuse him. And then I'd go after Cuba.
I think Cuba's easy.
Cuba, right? 24 hours.
Cuba's easy. And I think Cuba wants to go.
Yeah.
I think Cuba wants to go. Well, we'll finish up really quickly on Cuba. I think Cuba wants to go. Cuba is exhausted.
Exactly.
It's entirely exhausted. I think that if, they indicted Raul Castro. He's 93 years old. And somebody said, oh, they're going to do a Maduro on Raul Castro. I said, I think the last thing you want to do is surprise a 93-year-old guy.
No, Diaz-Canel. Diaz-Canel is Maduro down there right now.
Yeah, right.
There 20 years ago and down there 10 years ago, and the place is a basket case. The people are starving to death. It's dirty. They don't have electricity. They have huge blackouts. It's just waiting to be cleaned up.
And I think that maybe even the ruling clique there would not mind getting a hall pass to go someplace else for a while and leave the mess to the Americans to clean up. I mean, I think it's getting to that point, especially with the Venezuelan oil being cut off from them. They just don't have any. There's nowhere else to go.
Venezuelan oil is the game changer. And so you either cut a deal with the generals to run the country or leave and pay them off.
Yeah.
Gaesa is the general's country, the company that runs all the gas stations and hotels and everything.
I think that's the cheapest and easiest win that the Trump administration is going to get in the second term. And I think you're right. I think it's coming. They keep talking about it.
But it's all politics. There's no return for the American people to go spend a bunch of money dealing with Cuba.
Yeah.
There's no return. Who cares? They can't do anything.
There are no threat. That's the thing. I think Venezuela was the threat. Once you cut off Venezuela, then Cuba is no longer a threat. And
Venezuela really wasn't a threat to the United States. They talked a lot of bad rhetoric, but they didn't do anything bad to the United States. They sold a lot of drugs, but so does Mexico.
I would say that the only thing that I would disagree with you on that point is that they had an active, ongoing relationship with Hezbollah, and I think that was a threat.
They did. In Iran.
Yeah, and through Hezbollah, Iran. And I think that was a threat. But other than that, I think that the Western Hemisphere stuff is pretty much low-hanging fruit and relatively cheap. And so
Yeah,
maybe it makes sense to
I
just
wouldn't
stick with
mind seeing
that.
him go in and take out Ortega. I worked real hard to get rid of Ortega the first time, and we did. And then he came back.
Yeah.
Guy's terrible.
Yeah. He's a real problem, but I
And
think
he would be
also,
easier than Cuba, okay? Because there's no Gaesa, no military group that owns all the gas stations and hotels and stuff. He could just go in there and take Ortega out, and you're done.
and maybe that's coming up too, because Donald
Mhm.
Trump does seem to be pretty focused on the Monroe Doctrine,
Yeah,
and settling accounts in the Western Hemisphere. But I think that the Iran thing turned into a much bigger deal than he anticipated.
he
I
did.
do think he thought he was going to get out in a few weeks, and it just hasn't happened.
He bit off more than he could chew. I think he wanted to get Epstein off the front pages.
On that note, I think Ambassador Francis Rooney, we're gonna wrap it up because I think that's a pretty succinct way of wrapping it up. By the way, do you have anything new coming up that you want to promote, or just living a good life and not having to deal with all this stuff for most of the day?
I've been working with the kids. You know, we have a big construction company, does several $1 billion a year, and we have real estate development business. Our daughter runs. We're buying properties and doing different things, and it's kind of fun to see the kids run the companies and to sit back and help them.
Hey, look, I mean that's what at least semi-retirement is supposed to look like, right? And
Yeah,
God
and
bless
play
you
with the
for
grandbabies. Yeah,
exactly, and enjoy yourself. And I'm just glad that you spend a few minutes to enjoy yourself with me here on the podcast. I love talking with you, Ambassador Rooney. So you're welcome here anytime to talk about whatever you want to talk about. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Ed, thank you for having me on again. Thank you.